After we have conviction, the second one will be concentration. There's an old saying, isolate the matter around which you want to create. Another one is, out of sight, out of mind. If I want to be a creative person, I have to take one thing and be creative about it, and I have to get everything else out of the way. If I'm going to write a letter, I don't push the papers off the corner of the desk to have room enough to put my page down. I have the entire desk cleaned. Concentration can best be illustrated by a field of wheat. I've harvested the wheat and now I have straw. The sun comes up, shines, sun sets, there's no smoke in that field. Now we're going to compare the sun to a genius. The sun has power, it has fire, but it can't make any smoke in that field. If I take a little magnifying glass, and this is going to be called our concentration, if I hold it out into the field, what will the straw underneath the magnifying glass do? First it'll be a little smoke, then pretty soon I will have fire. We say then that concentration allows the sun to cause fire. The secret then is, can you concentrate completely with all five senses and isolate every single thing else? I wouldn't go down to town, corner of Broadway, set up a card table and a chair and try to read a book. We try to find a place where we can get away from everything. Now, this isolation means that I only do one thing at a time. And I have had people with low self-images brag about their being a genius, and they tell me that they can do two things at once. Let me define it for you tonight. If you do two things at once, are either one of them creative? No. They are both routine. Let me tell you what actually allows concentration. Concentration is the result of creating. When I'm creating, then I believe in concentration. When I do a routine function, then I do not believe in concentration. For example, I can do 5 things tonight at once, only if the 5 things are routine functions. The minute one of those becomes creative, I have to drop everything else but that one. I could ask a question tonight. How many here like to write letters? All right, not very many of you. Now, if you raised your hand, then I know your writing letters is creative. And I also know that the person who reads the letter you write likes to read them. Now, if you didn't raise your hand, writing letters is a routine function, which means it bores you, and likewise bores the person who receives it. By the way, this is the best logic I can give you to why, if you don't love to write letters, you shouldn't, because you're wasting the poor mailman's time. Now, back to what we're saying. Have you ever watched a film on TV, and let's go back to colonial days when they're going to write a message, and go from one fort to the other. And the man sits there with this beautiful, pure white parchment paper and takes this turkey quill, and he writes with this beautiful handwriting. And right in the middle of the movie, you want to do what? Have you ever had that feeling where not a ballpoint pen, a real fountain pen, and clean paper that's smooth? Has everyone had this feeling of joy? By the way, do you realize that when I saw the paper, was I in step 1? And I kept watching them write, which forced me, believe it or not, to slow down from my rapid pace because I had to do reflection because they take time to write. And then I had the impulse to get paper and do something, and then I killed it. Then you don't like to write letters. Go to the supermarket. Do they have music? Then what kind of a function are you doing when you're shopping? Routine. Now, I know a lot of college students will say, I like music to study by. Now, if you watch the way they study, it'll either be underlining or outlining or a dozen other ways of where I'm not learning anything, but I'm fixing the material so that I could learn it. Now, anytime you do something routine, are you bored? All right, then what do you have to have music for? The music takes away the boredom, which allows you to fool yourself. Right, the soothingness is the boredom being taken away. Which means you are really not creating, you're doing a routine function. Because if you are creating, is there any boredom? Then do you want music? No. So what you want to do then is use this technique I have just given you to determine whether you're doing a routine function or a creative function. What you should do in your life is eliminate the routine functions as fast as you can. Let's look at it this way. I am doing a certain function, like typing. And I can do this function very well. And there's no question of my proficiency in typing. But it so happens that I can hire a secretary who can type just as well as I can type. Then should I be typing? No. Now we're moving on. Typing is a routine function, and I should be freed from routine functions so I can spend my time on creative functions. I'll give you an actual law. You won't be able to do this probably tonight, but some of you within the next 20 years will be able to do this. Let this be a goal. Do not do anything on the face of the earth that somebody else can do. The minute somebody else can do it, hire them. And you go on to do something no one else can do. Now, can you see why this will have to be a 20-year goal for some of you? But eventually, can you see where you're going to arrive at? You will only be doing things that are original, that are unique, that are the actual expression of you, and are they all creative? And is there any boredom then in your life? Now, there'll be one exception. You'll still dress yourself. I mean, there are a few routine functions I don't know how you can get away from, but the majority of them, it's amazing to me, can be passed on. And the minute they can be passed on, they should be. Why don't you use this, though, for your own life? The next time you're doing two things at once, what should you tell yourself? They're both routine, so what should you be doing with them both? But never do something that you can hire somebody else to do it for unless you're getting spatial recreational values. And then is it really worth more to you than that? In other words, if you're scrubbing a floor and it's the same as you would get from skiing or golf or something else, well then we can't use the formula because that's your recreation. But if you do not find your recreation in scrubbing the floor and you are worth more than $1.75 and you are scrubbing the floor, you've wasted money and you're going in the hole. In other words, here's a housewife, and she could spend the hour painting, and that painting could sell for $30. Should she do the painting, or should she scrub the floor? She should paint. There's no question about it. In other words, you should develop yourself to your maximum potential, and this is the duty of the husband to make sure that his wife develops herself to her maximum potential. If she doesn't, then he's got a psychological problem. Then he's got more than he can handle, so he should always try to develop her. I'll give you an illustration. Here's a man who's spent his life not worth very much. And then he suddenly is successful in the world, and now he's a salesman, and he's worth a little more, but he hasn't changed his value system yet. So he drives to town for an appointment. And it's 2:30 and his appointment is at 3 o'clock. Imagine, he's a half hour early and he's at the building, but it's downtown and there's no place to park. So he spends a half an hour looking for a parking meter. And by the way, the first 15 minutes he's not looking for any parking meter. He's looking for one that's got a nickel in it. And after he goes past that stage, then finally he finds one. And he parks his car. All right, number one, he's late for his appointment. And he's a little harassed because in the appointment he's doing this for what reason? Looking at his watch. By the way, it's only going to cost him $1 for the ticket anyway. As he fools around thinking about something else, he loses the sale, which is the commission, all over $1 ticket. Now, here's another man who believes he's worth something. He has a good self-image. He drives straight into town and drives where? Straight to a parking place and pays 35 cents. Ends all the frustrations. Walks up, he's on time, he's collected, and can he concentrate at the time of the demonstration? He doesn't have to think about the meter maids walking around. He's not harassed. When he comes back down, instead of paying $1 parking ticket, or maybe they haul away, he has paid his 35 cents, which he already paid. And by the way, is he worth more than 35 cents the half hour he spends looking? What's happening is that as we increase our self-image, we do not do it clear across the board. In other words, we're growing so fast and becoming important so fast that we don't realize that we are valuable this much all the time. And by the way, tonight, why don't you figure out how much you're worth an hour? Just right now, think, what is it that you would sell your services for? It's interesting to actually feel what our values are. Now, after you find out what you're worth, should you get this money all the way across the board all the time? Yes, this is the secret of life. In other words, then you are worth this much. Now, to be worth more and more money, are you going to be doing routine things? No, if we wanted to hire somebody to do a routine job, how many people do we have to choose from? Millions. If I want somebody to put these lug bolts on this wheel, and all they have to do is do it fast enough so that they're ready for the next wheel, and that's what they're going to do all day long, all I have to do if I run a little bit of shortage of personnel is to increase the wage the next 1 hour. And I got some more people waiting at the door to go to work. Monkeys will not do this, by the way. You say, can a monkey actually work on an assembly line? Oh, yes, they can. They've done some experiments where the monkeys perform beautifully. They put the lug bolts on just as good as a man. What do you suppose happened by the third car? They got bored and walked away. They couldn't make the monkeys stay with it. A man will stay with it 9 years and 9 months. And if you don't give him 3 months vacation at this particular period of time, he'll crack up. I saw a film the other day that actually showed the man cracking up. Actual case history. He was in Detroit working on an assembly line, and it was in his 9th year, the summer of his 9th year. And he was right at that cracking stage. And they were bringing a tour of people through. You know how they bring tours through plants. And he was sitting there putting this bolt on. And this one lady reached over, you know, in the group of the tour, and looked at what he was doing, and she said, "My, what a complicated job." That was it. He took that wrench, turned around at that group of people and threw it at them. Didn't know what he was doing, turned around and walked right off the job. And they terminated him right on the spot. He could no longer work for them. Can you see what routine does to you? There's no joy, it's boredom, and it's something you endure. So tonight, why don't you set a goal for yourself to actually eliminate routine functions, one by one, substitute creative functions, and begin to increase the value of what you're worth per hour. All right, the next one is to collect all of the facts. You are creative tonight to the extent that your subconscious is full of material. If your subconscious is full of material, you're going to be successful, and there's nothing on earth going to stop you. So if you could read 4,000 words a minute, and if you would read 1 hour per day, what would happen to you in 5 years? Just think for a moment the capacities of your mind. Now, I realize that your computers are in tune with infinite computers. And we have proof of this, that you actually can be in tune with infinite wisdom and knowledge. Nevertheless, if your own memory drums are filled with material, you seem to function better. The collection of data, the collection of facts, knowledge into the memory drum presents a slight conflict in some people's minds. And it is based on the fact that when my present supply of facts in my own memory drum is not sufficient for a particular situation, can I not connect with an infinite supply in an infinite memory drum and have infinite knowledge? Of course, the answer is yes, you can. Then the problem, if I can, what's the motivation for me to collect knowledge? Why do I need facts if God knows it all anyway? To answer this question, let me give you an illustration of a relationship between myself and my son. Any time he's doing a particular project and he exhausts his present mental capacities or his physical abilities, I always come in at the right time and add whatever is needed to complement so that he becomes a complete being. Therefore, he's successful, he builds a good self-image, and he feels complete. When he's smaller, my complement is larger. As he matures and as he grows, my complement becomes smaller. This pleases me to no end. As he keeps on growing, every once in a while he ties into a project that I think is over his head. Before I know it, he has finished it without me having to compliment any of his lacks or limitations. And then I realize that I'm successful, that I am rearing him in full maturity, and this is my goal. All right, now let's use the same illustration with God. Of course, if you're a baby, if you're immature, and you tackle a project and you have faith, and you exhaust your present abilities, you can count on your Creator to compliment you and to finish off the job. But what does your head really desire? He desires full maturity for you. Therefore, in answer to the question, I would say that the primary motivation that I have to collect and secure all of the data that I possibly can to create a memory drum that exhausts every supply of knowledge that I know is to be in total submission to my head and to completely please my head by growing into full maturity. Did you know more things are in print now than have ever been before? And then let's do one more thing with our reading. Will you have time to read everything in print? Why don't you be selective? I'll tell you some secrets that I have. Number one, a lot of people in the seminar read books. And they'll come and tell me, this is a book you should read. Then I have my wife read it. And then if she says I should read it, then I read it. Have I done two types of elimination procedures so I will not waste my time reading a book that's not of value? Furthermore, would I waste any time on anything negative? Not one single second. And if you'll gather all this information, when you start to be creative, will you have a lot of ideas? This means that the reading of information is vital to creating. So we want to actually have what we call a collection of data, and always remember too that you really do live in this society. So should you play ball with this society and abide by their rules? Yes, you should. You have to. Now, the society today, even though it's wrong, says knowledge is power. Therefore, if I want power, as far as this society is concerned, do I have to have knowledge? This is true. In other words, knowledge today is worth money. Knowledge today is power. Now, if I want to go back to the feudal days, I would question the value of a PhD. I really would. I would think your time could be spent better practicing fencing. Or whatever you call it when you ride a horse and take a long thing and knock a guy off. And I kind of think that I would save my money and I'd buy a good horse. One that would not flinch and one that could just move just right for me. Now, if I lived back when Sutter had his gold mine, would I practice fencing? It would be kind of a foolish thing. Would I get a PhD? I don't think that would help me any. I think I'd get me a 6-gun. I think I'd spend 4 hours a day shooting at tin cans. I don't think they had a tin can then, but I'd find something as a target. Now, what would I want to learn how to shoot a 6-gun? So I could hire some gunslingers, and so I could keep control over them. Now, you know what happened He didn't know how to use a gun. He didn't know how to hire any gunslingers. All he knew how to do was notify the Army. 6 months later, a year later, who comes in to save him? The Army. Where's his gold? It's all gone. Now, did you realize that he should have been a millionaire? Society at that particular time said power was physical force. Now, does society say that physical force is power tonight? You go down here and hit a guy in the street and you find out, they lock you up. They say you were foolish. In other words, there's no power in physical force tonight. But is there power in knowledge? Look at the pay scales. Do we pay according to the knowledge that you have? You can see it anywhere you look tonight. All right, now, if you live in a society which says knowledge is power, even though I'm going to prove to you in a few more sessions that it's not true at all, why not play along with them and collect the money? In other words, if that's the only way that you can obtain wealth in our society, then would you be best to learn a few things? Then I would see no reason tonight why in our society you shouldn't spend 1 hour per day, 4,000 words per minute reading selective material. Number 4, collection of people. There's 2 kinds of people. Those that know you're no good, and those that think you're the greatest genius that ever lived. There should only be one kind of person in your life. Those that think you're the greatest genius that ever lived. So you have to make a little move, don't you? We call this a move of elimination. We eliminate the people who think we're no good. And this is a wonderful thing because this is the best way I know for you to become good. Because if you eliminate all the people out of your world that think you're no good, then you are good. Can you visualize this housewife? She's got a rose bush, which is her husband. This is appropriate right now because a lot of people are getting their buds ready for the rose show. In other words, we don't know which bud's going to win the rose show. I'll tell you, all the people who are raising roses, are they letting every bud develop? Generally, they're not going to take a chance of cutting buds until they see it open. All right, this housewife, she looks at the buds coming out on her husband and she thinks they're not good enough. Clip, 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 clip. Let's describe the way she clips them. He's starting to walk out the door. She says, your heels are run down in the back, did you know? I told you you should get them fixed. He says, I forgot. They're not shined either. I'm sorry I didn't get time to get them shined. He says, I don't know, that suit should be pressed. He says, I don't know how you're going to make it in this world. I never have figured it out yet. He says, you didn't get a haircut either. He's 5 minutes late. She says, where's your hat? He says, I forgot it. I don't know where it is. I've got time to look for it. She keeps talking to him, and she says, aren't you going to kiss me goodbye? And he says, I don't quite feel like it. So he starts to turn around. He's going to kiss her anyway because that might be a way to satisfy her for a moment. He says, oh, what an outlandish tie. You have no taste whatsoever. She says, you'll never make it. Go on, you're going to be late. So he goes on. All day long, what's he think of himself? He hides behind people. He gets against the wall so they can't see the back of him. Sure enough, she doesn't get the wall-to-wall carpet. She doesn't get anything that she wanted. But was she trying? She nipped all the buds. Now I'll give you an illustration of a wife that's in love. While he's sleeping, she's polishing his shoes. She has already gone through all of his ties and eliminated those that are really horrible. And even if he should get mixed up, she's noticed it at the breakfast table, and she's already gone in and she's picked out the tie that should be. And when she comes up to kiss him goodbye, she slips it in his coat pocket and says, sometime when you're in the restroom, see what you think of this color. The suit's pressed. Of course, he didn't have time to do it, but she pressed it herself that morning. He's not late because she has everything organized and planned. She walks up to him and she says, you are the greatest. He says, I've got one thing for sure in my mind, nothing can stop you. He says, there's no match for you anywhere to be found in the whole earth. And then he's just about ready to leave, and they have a few extra minutes. She says, come back in here for just a minute. He comes back in. He says, what do you want? She kisses him again. She says, I just want to see how it felt to kiss the greatest man on earth. And he smiles, and he walks out the door, and he's happy. Is he going to be a success? All right, now that's the kind of a person that we call a person who makes you feel like you're worth something. The other kind of a person is the person who's critical. When you go to the coast, or go bowling, or horseback riding, or skiing, or fishing, or whatever your hobbies are, who should you select to go with you? The man who knows it's not going to turn out right anyway. The man who knows that nothing really ever is right. The man who knows that the break you got last week at work you didn't deserve it anyway, it was just luck. That guy will ruin you. So we say then you want to collect creative people. Let me tell you, tonight there are 50,000 of them in the city of Portland. That's enough for your friendship circle. All right, the next one, a collection of ideas. Several good hints I can give you real quickly. Number one, every human being on earth has millions of ideas. You're loaded with them. But if you have a low self-image, you murder them immediately. Now why? Would I put an idea out here on the table and give you a chance to criticize it? Furthermore, since it's not your idea and since it's mine, will you have mercy? No, and you'll kill it maybe the wrong way. Could I put it to death quietly without you knowing I even have it? And then do I not risk damaging my ego? So we say a person with a low self-image kills all their ideas and they never have any. So what I would like for you to do tonight is to take a firm conviction that are there any such thing as no good ideas? Well, I'd like to tell you an idea that I think is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard of. It saved the United States Navy several $100,000. I'm going to tell you the idea, and when I first tell you the idea, you'll probably laugh at it. It's so stupid. But it's true. There was a man who graduated from Annapolis, and he was on his little destroyer out in the South Pacific, and he found himself in a very dangerous predicament. With the motor shut off of the destroyer, a mine had drifted against the side of the ship. Now, it was in such a situation that if he starts the motors, the mine explodes and they lose the ship. So he says, I'll solve the problem, we'll use brainstorming. And I would recommend that you read Dr. Osborne's book called Applied Imagination. He describes your absorptive function, the ability to observe, the ability to memorize and recall, the ability to analyze and judge, and finally the ability to visualize, foresee, and generate ideas, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Now he describes brainstorming very thoroughly in this book. He even lists the 95 firms that use it in the United States as a regular part of their management procedure. Brainstorming means that all the men gather at the edge of the ship. They're hanging on their rail looking down at the mine, and they give every idea that comes in their head, just as fast as they can. And one guy, when he's looking over there, he says, why don't we all take a big breath and we'll blow it away? Nobody laughed. Why? It was a real mine. And they were looking at it. By the way, many ideas are coming out.